I'm trying to think of something to say.
All right, we're outside Governor Hochul's office to make sure $120 million is in the final budget. So, Hochul, escucha, estamos en la lucha. 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 Hochul, escucha, estamos en la lucha.
Keeping us warm. Keeping us warm.
Up with liberation, down, down with deportation. Up with liberation, down, down with deportation. Up with liberation, down, down with deportation. Woo! The care for immigrant families, let me hear you. All right, we have an amazing statewide coalition fighting for access to immigrant legal services in our New York State budget. Governor Hochul, we've got 1 week left until the end of the state budget, and we're here to make sure we get $120 million in the final budget. Are you ready to fight?
Yes!
Are you ready to win?
Yes!
All right. Thank you so much for being here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alana Pilar Castillo. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy with the New York Immigration Coalition. Give it up for NYC. I want to thank Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie, our champions in the legislature, Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel, Assemblymember Catalina Cruz, who have already ensured that we have secured historic levels of legal and social services funding for our immigrant New Yorkers in the FY24 budget. Are we excited for that? We are joined by some amazing members of the CARE Coalition and the NYC. Let me hear it up for our steering committee members at the Vera Institute for Justice. Let me hear it up for our steering committee members for IARC. Our members from Brooklyn, Mixteca. Our members from Manhattan, Cabrini Immigrant Services of New York City. Thank you for standing with us in solidarity and in La Lucha to make sure that we address some of the urgent challenges that we're seeing here in our state. We're seeing immigrants used as political pawns from the southern border, and we need services that make sure that our newest New Yorkers can integrate with dignity and with, more importantly, access to justice. We're also here to fight for the Access to Representation Act, right? Yes. The ARA is the first in the nation piece of legislation that's been introduced, and it would guarantee a right to legal counsel for people facing deportation proceedings, not just this year, but in the future, ensuring everyone who needs access to a lawyer has access to these life-saving services so that families can stay together. Right now, many immigrants, even children, are forced to defend themselves against trained government attorneys simply because they can't afford private counsel. Is that right? No! That ain't right. It's cruel, it's unjust, and it's wrong at every level. Our immigration system is entirely too complex, and we need the correct legal services to be able to address these needs. By this year, we are committed to passing the Access to Representation Act. We have a chance to right this wrong and make sure that low-income New Yorkers have a fighting chance and access to due process in immigrant legal proceedings. We want to make sure that folks have access to justice in the court system and that fair and due process can be satisfied. We have some tremendous champions in this coalition and on this campaign That's why we're here in New York City, outside Governor Hochul's office, to demand justice for New Yorkers across the state, but especially in New York City, a city of immigrants. And with that, I want to introduce a champion from the borough of Brooklyn. Our Brooklyn Borough President, Antonio Reynoso, to the mic.
An aplauso for Alana for the great work that she's just done today. And all of the organizations that are here with us today, I can't tell you how grateful I am. And this comes down to values. What we're saying is if the speakers of both houses in the state have agreed to the $120 million this year, we want to first thank them for that, but then just ask them if their values are going to change next year, or the year after that, or in 10 years, or in 20 years. It won't. If they see the value in funding this year, why not commit to funding it in perpetuity to continue to get justice for immigrants here in New York State? And that's what we're talking about. So it's about ensuring the $120 million are in the budget this year, but thereafter ensuring that it's there every single year so we can do right for justice for the immigrants that are coming to New York City or New York State. The other thing outside of values is the statistics show that with representation, 60% of the folks get a positive outcome through deportation proceedings. Without a lawyer, it's 17%. Nothing has changed outside of representation. Justice is being done for a higher amount of people with representation than with not. Just simply having representation makes a difference. So if you, in the state level, agree that we should be representing immigrants and that if given a shot can stay here and not be deported at a 60% rate when there is representation, then you stand up and you say yes to the $120 million and move forward with the Representation Act that would allow for this to stay on in perpetuity. Thank you so much, everyone, for allowing me to be here. And I know I had to cross a bridge to get to Manhattan, but I love you all, and don't forget to spread love. It's the Brooklyn way. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Antonio. A son of immigrants from the Dominican Republic is DR in the house. Who never forgot where he came from, always lifted people up as he rose, and we're so proud to have him as a partner champion, un hermano mío de corazón, and someone who always has our back. Next, I want to introduce Dina from Neighbors Link. As mentioned, this is a statewide coalition, so I'm really honored to welcome some of our partners from the Westchester region. Neighbors Link does phenomenal services for folks all throughout the Mid-Hudson region. And with that, I want to invite Dina to the mic, as well as Kelly to share her story.
Buenas tardes a todos, mi nombre es Dina. En esta oportunidad quiero dar a conocer mi caso sobre mi proceso de migración, que fue encontrar ayuda legal gratuita. Pero con bastante paciencia, fe y optimismo, mi familia y yo pudimos finalmente contactarnos con la asociación que nos ayudó de principio a fin con nuestro proceso migratorio. Los profesionales de esta institución trabajaron incansablemente y gracias a ellos pudimos alcanzar nuestros sueños y propósitos. Mi familia y yo decidimos salir de nuestro país de manera urgente porque nuestras vidas corrían riesgo de muerte por mi trabajo como oficial de policía. Luego de que mi familia fue liberada en este país mediante un parol humanitario, la odisea es una pesada para nosotros. En principio, encontrar un lugar donde vivir, con el poco dinero ahorrado en nuestro país, la situación se hizo muy desesperante. Nuestros ahorros terminaban aceleradamente, día a día. Por otro lado, la urgencia de contar con un abogado que nos represente en nuestro proceso. Es así que empezamos a realizar algunas consultas con algunos abogados de inmigración. Vimos que hacían que nuestras angustias y preocupaciones crezcan aún más, porque su representación era muy costosa, demasiado costosa. Montos exorbitantes de dinero que por tratarse de 4 integrantes de mi familia, el monto me causaría mucho más, porque era imposible de contratar con ellos. Por estas situaciones y dificultades económicas, es que me propuse buscar ayuda legal gratuita. Migraciones entonces nos había facilitado varias hojas en las cuales existían muchos números de teléfonos de diversas organizaciones sin fines de lucro. Desde entonces me la pasaba llamando y llamando todos los días, sin tener ningún resultado. Todos estos números únicamente me enviaban al buzón de voz. Ya por medio de algunas amistades es que llegué a obtener un número de celular de una organización que funcionaba a 40 minutos de mi casa. Luego de haber visitado a esta organización, ellos únicamente me dijeron que no podían ayudarme porque tenían muchos casos pendientes. Y fueron ellos que me refirieron a la organización que finalmente nos ayudaron paso a paso con nuestro proceso migratorio. Que gracias al trabajo impecable de los abogados y paralegales de esa organización, mi familia y yo, en menos de un año obtuvimos que un juez nos concede el tan anhelado asilo político. Entonces todo cambió para nosotros. Desaparecieron las angustias y preocupaciones y las personas ahora mi familia y yo estamos felices y contentos con la gran ayuda que recibimos por parte de esta organización. Ojalá que así como nosotros, muchas familias también puedan conseguir este tipo de ayuda, así de mejorar las situaciones y dificultades que aún nos pasan muchos. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
My name is Tina Yesenia Villani. In this opportunity, I want to present my case about the immigration process and how difficult it is to find free legal services. But with a lot of patience, hope, and optimism, my family and I were able to finally get in contact with the organization that helped us from the beginning to end with our immigration process. The professionals of this organization worked tirelessly, and thanks to them, we were able to reach our plan and purpose. My family and I decided to leave our country in a urgent manner because our lives were in risk of murder due to my job as a police officer in Peru. After my family was released in this country under humanitarian parole, it was a nightmare from the beginning from my family. At first, finding a place to live with the minimum savings we brought with us was challenging. Our savings were going fast rapidly, day by day. But while this happened, we were urgently looking to find a lawyer to represent in our process. We were able to make some consultations with immigration lawyers, but these lawyers made our answers and worries grow even more than they were before. Their costs were very high, growing even more when considering the 4 members of my family. It was impossible for us to hire them. Because of these economic difficulties, I began to look for free legal aid. Immigration gave us many sheets full of numbers and non-profit organizations. I spent time calling these numbers day after day without receiving any answer or positive response from any of them. Most of them sent me straight to voicemail. Through friends of mine, I obtained a phone number of an organization about 40 minutes from my home. They told me that they were not able to help me due to their vast number of pending cases, but they were able to refer me to the organization that finally helped us. This organization assists our family and me step by step with organization process. Thanks to the great job of these lawyers and paralegals from this organization, my family and I were able to receive a political asylum from a judge in less than a year. After this, everything changed for us. The anxious and worries that followed my family for so long were gone, and we were happy by the great help we received from this organization. I hope other families are able to receive type of support like us and be able to get these situations difficult for many people.
Kelly, un aplauso por Dina y Kelly, por favor. All right, you guys know why we're here. Joco, escucha, estamos en la lucha. Joco, escucha, estamos en la lucha. Joco, escucha, estamos en la lucha. All right, thank you so much, Dina, for sharing your story, and thank you so much for emphasizing one of the major challenges that we have is the wait list to be able to have access to these free services. That's why we want to ensure that the historic investments, 5 times the budget that these services have ever received from the state, stay in the final New York State budget. So we want $120 million de nuevo. We want $120 million in this year's state budget to fund these critical life-saving services. With that, I want to introduce a tremendous partner that can speak firsthand to these issues. We're joined by the Safe Passage Project and our partner, Alexandra, to share a few words.
Familia, how are you? I'm Alexandra Rizzio, and I'm a managing attorney for the Safe Passage Project. Safe Passage Project is a legal service provider based out of New York City and Long Island, serving unaccompanied children who are facing deportation. These children arrive in New York after fleeing violence, persecution, and poverty in their home countries. The government places them in deportation proceedings. They are expected to navigate a complex legal system to avoid being deported, often in a language not their own. No one in our immigration legal system is guaranteed access to an attorney if they can't afford one. Not children, not adults, no one.
That's not right!
In fact, the youngest child I have personally represented was only 18 months old. The youngest child represented by Safe Passage Project was 4 months old. While these are extreme cases, all children that come to our organization are in urgent need of legal services as they fight to stay in New York. Our immigration laws are complex and the process is complicated and bureaucratic. It's impossible to imagine how they would navigate our legal system without an attorney. We fight for every client, but the work has become overwhelming. More and more children need our help, and their cases are lasting longer and longer due to court and visa backlogs. Safe Passage Project's caseload has grown significantly over the last few years to keep up with needs. Just recently, I had a case that was originally scheduled to be heard by the court in April, being pushed back once again to August. Other cases are being pushed back much farther than that. The current waiting list for Safe Passage Project extends to September 2022. Our organization is unable to serve newly arrived children simply because we are so short-staffed with too many cases. I regularly tell clients to expect their cases to last between 2 and 5 years, if not longer. This means that people's immigration cases are left in limbo for years, keeping their lives on hold. But these aren't just problems facing Safe Passage Project. They're affecting every immigration legal service provider across New York State. The Access to Representation Act offers a chance for New York legal service providers to help more children and families by guaranteeing access to legal counsel in deportation proceedings. It's a matter of due process. While the historic levels of legal and social services funding in the One House budget is remarkable, we need permanent solutions to ensure that these issues do not continue to impact the ability of children and families to build their lives here in New York. Lawyers at the Safe Passage Project are incredibly effective. We win over 90% of our cases by securing safe and stable futures in New York for the children we serve. By passing the Access to Representation Act in New York's budget, we can help protect more immigrant children and families. Support the ARA, thank you.
When immigrants are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When immigrants are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
so much, Alexandra, for sharing that background. We know that these services are absolutely critical, but without the funding to make sure that these cases can be successfully heard and successfully argued, our families are at risk. The Care for Immigrant Families Coalition is a statewide coalition that's working to make sure that we have access to these critical services. We have so much representation from our legal service community, civil rights community, direct service community, and I want to make sure that they hear you not only here in New York City, but across the state. So once again, when immigrants are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When immigrants are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
El pueblo unido
Jamás será vencido.
El pueblo unido
Jamás será vencido.
El pueblo unido
Jamás será vencido.
We've got some materials so that our neighbors here in New York City can contact their elected officials and also do outreach to the governor. So we're going to distribute some of those materials so that we can just get it out so people continue to push, continue to fight for these important services. We've got more stories to come. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here and thank you for enduring this cold. Let's make sure to continue to spread the word about the Access to Representation Act, and we'll convene in a couple minutes to hear a couple more testimonials and stories from our champions. Thank you. Okay, great. So before we do that, I do want to acknowledge one of the champions of this legislation, a member of our steering committee. As we've already heard, the Vera Institute for Justice has been really invested in this campaign, not only here in New York State, but throughout the country, with their Right to Counsel campaigns, with their programs that fund efforts that create so many of the models that New York City and New York State have been able to innovate. So I want to introduce from Vera, Rosie. Come on in.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today and recognizing how important it is to support our immigrant neighbors. New York State was the first jurisdiction in the country to provide publicly funded deportation defense to people in detention. New York State recognized that need in 2013 with a pilot program that went up to scale across the state in 2017, making it the first state to do so. Since then, here now in 2023, over 50 jurisdictions, including 8 states across the country, have followed New York's lead because of the success of that program, because of the difference that legal representation makes in keeping families together, in keeping New York prosperous, in keeping communities stable and safe. Now it's time to take the logical next step and prevent budget dances and negotiations every year from threatening to destabilize this funding and threatening to discontinue life-saving services that are ongoing. There's a patchwork of legal services across the state, and it's not enough. As we've heard, 60,000 New Yorkers right now are in immigration court trying to fight their case without a lawyer in an area of law that is enormously complicated, where the stakes are extremely high and often a matter of life and death. The Access to Representation Act is the natural answer to this. This investment is an investment in our communities and in the future of New York. This investment will provide training, will provide attorneys, will provide infrastructure to respond to the changing immigration legal system that will help New York stand up for what's right and pass immigration policy that recognizes that immigrants are part of the fabric of New York State, and immigrants are what make us strong, and we owe it to our immigrant neighbors to protect them and invest in our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you, Vera, for all the incredible work that you're doing across the country to make sure that so many of the innovation, creation, and important programs that have been founded right here in New York City are modeled across the country, and that these important services are accessible through people throughout the country as well. We've seen tremendous leadership in our city around these types of services, going all the way back to the council in 2013 founding the Unaccompanied Minors Initiative to address this need. And one of the people that was there at the founding, back when he was a council member, our current comptroller, Brad Lander, continues to fight with immigrant communities. He has been a tremendous champion for our efforts to make sure that we ensure that our budget is a moral document and that we are funding the services that reflect the values of the city and of the broader state. He has supported so many of our efforts, and I want to give him a big warm welcome to our City Comptroller, Brad Lander.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Alana. Thank you everybody who's out here fighting for access to representation and to make sure that New York continues to be a place that is welcoming to immigrant families. I was indeed, as Alana said, proud when I was in the city council and working with our then speaker, Melissa Mark-Viverito, to be fighting to make sure that there was room for unaccompanied minors to land in this city safely, and of course proud to be part of launching what became the New York Immigrant Family Unity Project, something that has proven successful all across the country, and the numbers just speak for themselves. When families have representation, whether they are in immigration detention or not, they're so much more likely to succeed in becoming able to contribute, in landing safely, in escaping unfair detention, and in becoming our neighbors and contributing. You know, New York City, New York State have thrived for generations by welcoming immigrant families. You know, just last week, I was at Cardinal Dolan's luncheon for St. Patrick's Day. And what did he say, welcoming various luminaries from across the city and state? The governor was there, the mayor was there, members of Congress were there, faith leaders were there. You know, what he said was, St. Patrick's Day is a reminder of the Irish immigrant tradition in New York City, and that folks came here escaping war and violence and poverty, had to struggle to make it, but found welcome, and then were able to become the business leaders, the political leaders, the cultural leaders of this city. And that happened so many times over and over again. For my Jewish grandparents and great-grandparents to find a place as we were fleeing war and violence that made it possible, and to see what has happened for generations of New Yorkers. So we have to do that again. Let's recognize that the folks walking across a continent to escape war and violence and poverty in Venezuela are the Irish immigrants, the Jewish immigrants of today. And if you say, I hope I would have been there then, you have to be there now. And that's what we're saying to the governor and the legislature, because we have that opportunity today. So step one, obviously, is passing a budget that includes $130 million to make sure there is representation in this year's budget for immigrant families. That's just step one. We need to pass the Access to Representation Act to make sure it becomes a permanent feature of New York State, that there will be legal representation for our immigrant families. It phases in wisely. It's a smart piece of legislation. And it's not only an investment in helping families succeed, for all those reasons, it's a long-term investment in the stability and thriving of our state. We know so many of those immigrant families will start businesses, will create new value for our state, will become people who are working hard but also employing others, will be future leaders. We've got so many immigrants now who are leaders themselves in the council, in the legislature. So that's what we're doing. We're giving these families a chance, but we are also creating the future of New York State. And let's be clear, we just have to do it across the full spectrum. We got to make sure that for asylum seekers who have arrived here, there's an opportunity for them to get the support they need to file those asylum applications, to file their work authorizations so that they can get on their feet. Help them, support them, yes, absolutely, in the shelter system, but support them to get out of the shelter system, and then continue to provide the access to representation that we know families need and deserve, and that we know our state and our city will benefit so much from. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for being out here, and let's just make sure, this is an opportunity for a win-win-win. We're out in front of the governor's office, but this is an opportunity, right? The one house budget's supposed to contain $130 million, and if we can have both houses of the legislature and the governor agree to put this money in the budget and then move forward to pass the Access to Representation Act, it's a win for the governor. It's a win for both houses of the legislature. It's a win for this coalition. It's a win for immigrant families, and it's a win for the future of New York. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to our comptroller. I want to acknowledge that whether it's in the halls of power, whether it's in the media or in our communities, he's been standing with us along with other city and state representatives. I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by a representative from the Office of the Public Advocate, Giovanni Williams, Fabiola. Thank you so much for being here with us. We've seen support, whether it's at Port Authority or at the shelters or within our different, negotiations that are happening behind the scenes. We have consistently seen our fighters step up to make sure that we can have these critical investments. So we heard a little bit about what this down payment looked like 10 years ago, but we know that we continue to have support in the city council, and every year we make sure that our council members and the council speaker hold the line to continue to make these important investments. So I want to introduce from the office of Councilmember Christopherleonjohnson, Georgia, we've been joined by Jack. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very encouraged by the turnout today in the rain. Kind of pushed out to the sidewalk in front of the governor's office. And so I'll be brief. Deportation is violent. And it is violent, especially for families, for mothers, for fathers, for children who come here to this country seeking a better life, seeking a life away from violence, from degradation, and from poverty. And our governor loves to call New York a sanctuary state and a haven for immigrants. Let's have the governor put her money where her mouth is and invest $120 million this year, next year, and every year to make sure that our immigrants get the legal representation that they deserve and a fighting chance to stay here in this country to build a better life for themselves and for their families, for their neighborhoods, and for the city and state of New York. Thank you.
All right. One last time. Up with liberation. Down with deportation. Up with liberation. Down with deportation. Up with liberation. Down with deportation. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here. As we've heard, the Access to Representation Act is about justice, equity, and due process for New Yorkers. This is not controversial. We all agree that attorneys are critical to ensuring success in these complicated proceedings, and New Yorkers deserve the same right to counsel as everyone else. That is why, as so many folks have said, it is absolutely critical that we secure $120 million in the final budget, that we pass the Access to Representation Act. We can't do it without you. So thank you again for braving the rain. We know that it's not going to stop us. We'll see you all in Albany. We've got 1 week to go. Are we going to fight? Yes! Win? Yes! All right, thank you so much. Give it up for yourselves.